Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, Jens Davidson here. Sorry it's been a while since I've uploaded videos. Basically, the summer months have been spent at my parents' house, helping them when I'm not working weekends, I should say. Has been spent at my parents' house helping them remodel because they want to eventually put their house up on the market, take advantage of ridiculous housing prices right now, and move up closer to me where the property taxes are vastly cheaper. But when I haven't been at their house on the weekends, helping them with remodeling projects, I've been doing more so homeowner projects around my own house, such as trim on doors and landscaping and so on and so forth. And basically not stuff that I'm going to put on YouTube, gardening too. And any free time that I've had, like during the week, after work, I have been spent on a separate project, which also I'm not really going to put on YouTube because, for one, it'd be incredibly boring. Two, it's a subject that I really suck at. And three, I would spend the rest of my life editing the videos because it's been so many hours spent on it. And it's this little guy right here. This is a 1978 Yamaha Xs-400. I've done a pretty good bit of customizing work on it, from the dual exhaust to the taillight turn signal configuration, and then electronic ignition upgrade, which this thing's not running right, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with it. Probably the coolest thing is speedometer, tachometer, LED, mini, much smaller than the obscenely large stock configuration, and less dorky looking turn signals up front as well, and clip-on handlebars like sport bikes. Friggin' love it. In terms of rideability, the only issue of this bike is something's up with, I don't know, the carburetors perhaps, because low RPM gets up and goes really well, but once you start opening up the throttle, especially under a load, i.e. climbing a hill, this thing just starts spitting and sputtering horrendously, and I don't even know what the issue is at this point because I've gone through the carburetors, the floats are adjusted to perfection, the idle mixer screw is adjusted correctly, the carbs are balanced. But when I use a vacuum style manometer on this thing, using vacuum gauges, the idle vacuum is only like 1 or 2 psi, which is, I don't think that's right. Any car like this guy pulls around 18 inches of vacuum. Or, I'm sorry, 18 psi of vacuum. But anyway, I digress. This thing, I've spent a heck of a lot of hours on this thing, basically all of my free time, trying to get this sorted out. I just finished all the electrical modifications and all that stuff last week and finally got it riding, but that's when I've come across this whole spitting and sputtering issue. But anyway, subject of today's video, besides a channel update, is blacksmithing. And I want to show you guys the coolest and frankly most useful blacksmith tool there is, I think, and that is on the subject of metal identity. So you can see I've got 2 pieces of steel here. This one on top was a railroad track clip of some sort. You can see it's roughly 1/2 inch thick or so. This end I forge welded last week, and so that's actually 3 layers. You can see if we can get that on camera. Yeah, you can see that there's 2 separate demarcation lines there. So I forge welded that a couple times to bulk it up, and I'm eventually going to cut that, forge it a little bit stockier, punch a hole in there and make a nail header out of it. Because given the purpose of this thing, some sort of a clip, I assumed that it is some sort of spring steel or temperable steel, So it's got a good bit of carbon in it because you can't make a spring out of low carbon steel. The steel beneath it is a bar that I bought. This is 3/4 inch by 2 feet. I have another one inside my house. This is 01 tool steel. I bought this earlier this week. So 01 makes phenomenal knives and tools. I've got 4 feet of it, and it's really cheap. This piece was $13.06. The only issue is that it's like a 40-minute one-way drive to get to the place where I purchased that. But anyway, in the realm of blacksmithing, there are ultimately 2 types of steel. Steel that you know, i.e. this 01 right here, or mystery steel. We really have no idea what this is. So a lot of blacksmiths have come up with different ways of identifying mystery steel, and the most prominent one is spark testing, where you take your piece of steel and you run it up against a bench grinder or a belt grinder or something like that, and you assess the sparks that come off. And based on the characteristics of the sparks, you can identify if it's got a lot of carbon in it, i.e. something that you can use for a blade, or you can tell the converse, it really doesn't have much carbon in it, and it's more of a mild steel and not at all useful for a blade. Walter Sorrells, who's a very prominent YouTube bladesmith, he did a very good comprehensive video where he tested a whole bunch of known steels. So he purchased steels from a reputable supplier, and he knew the identity of them, and he showed you the spark testing and how they looked differently, so that you can have a piece of mystery steel, maybe a friend gave you or something like that. You can spark test it and compare it to his video and get somewhat of an idea of what it is. But this is actually not mystery steel. I have mentioned in previous videos that I am an analytical chemist by profession, and I now have access to a spark optical emission spectrometer. What that instrument does is it uses a tungsten electrode up against the surface of the steel. It induces a high energy spark, and the resulting atomic emission from that is representative of the elemental composition of the steel. If you grab a drinking glass of water, put a whole bunch of table salt in there, mix it up thoroughly, and then put a little bit of that saltwater solution over an open flame, like your kitchen stove top, you will see a bright yellowish orangish flame come off. And that is because the sodium, that's the atomic emission spectrum of sodium, it's dominantly, to the human eye, a yellowish color. So same principle applies here, where the different elements that make up this metal, i.e. iron, carbon, cobalt, nickel, manganese, so on and so forth, they all give off a unique spectrum of light. And so by inducing a spark against the surface and measuring the wavelengths of light that come off and the relative intensities of the wavelengths of that light that comes off, you can develop an assessment, a quantitative and qualitative assessment of the elemental composition of that steel. And then by comparing that composition, that data, against known reference standards or data tables, which can be found online, you can then arrive at the identity that this is 1065 steel. And there's your printout. Carbon, which is what bladesmiths are most concerned with, that is 0.644%. Silicon, basically 0.14615. Manganese, 0.8. Phosphorus, 0.026%. Sulfur, 0.03%. Chromium, moly, nickel, copper, aluminum, acetine, boron, bismuth, cerium, cobalt, manganese, magnesium, niobium, lead, antimony, tin, tantalum, lanthanum, titanium, vanadium, tungsten, zinc, zirconium, selenium, nickel, calcium, tellurium, and iron. Obviously iron, the most dominant one, 98.11%. In case you didn't know, in the realm of carbon steel identity, I called this 1065 steel. What that means, the 65 means that it is 0.65% carbon, and the 10 refers to a carbon steel. And if you look up online some data tables on the composition of 1065 steel, you will find that carbon is generally between 0.63% and 0.67% or something like that. And manganese similarly is between around 0.7-ish to 0.85%, and there's also equivalently sulfur and phosphorus in it. So dead ringer. This is 1065. Now that I have this instrument, there is no longer mystery steel in my life because I can identify it. So anyway, I'm going to quit jabbing because my battery's almost dead, and I kind of accomplished what I set out to here. So thank you very much for watching. Again, I apologize that it's been so long since I've uploaded videos. Hopefully I get back to that soon. We shall see. Depends on how projects go at my parents' house mainly. But anyhow, we'll catch you on the next video. And again, thank you for watching, and I appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe. Bye now.